"Don't drink that wine, it's poisoned," I told the mafia boss, and he laughed. A short, cold, arrogant laugh as if his own life were nothing but a game. "You think I'm afraid of a little wine," he said. A few minutes later, the servant who tasted the wine collapsed dead before everyone's eyes. The entire hall fell silent. Dante Romano's gaze slowly turned toward me, no longer filled with disdain, but with suspicion. I met his eyes and whispered I recognized its scent, the scent of the thing that once killed me. Hey, if that hook just hit you right in the chest like it did for me, every time I replay it in my head, grab your phone real quick. Like this video, drop a comment about a time you saw something coming that no one else did, and subscribe so we can keep sharing these real stories of standing up when the world knocks you down. All right, let's keep going. The grand hall in that upscale restaurant felt like it shrank around me the second I knocked that glass from Dante's hand. Crystals shattered on the marble floor, red wine splashing everywhere like blood from a fresh wound. Everyone froze forks, mid-air conversations cut off sharp. I stood there, my apron stained, hands shaking, but not from fear, exactly more from the weight of what I'd just done. His men, these big guys in tailored suits with bulges under their jackets, jumped up like I'd declared war. One of them grabbed my arm so tight I felt the bruise forming right away. "You got a death wish, girl," he snarled, his breath hot and boozy on my face. I bowed my head low, staring at the mess I'd made, the shards glinting under the chandeliers. "I'm sorry. There's something wrong with that wine." I mumbled, my voice barely carrying over the murmurs starting to swell. Dante just sat there at the head of the table, his dark eyes narrowing like knives. He was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and that suit hugging his broad shoulders like it was made for a king. "You think I need a servant to teach me how to drink?" His voice was ice low and controlled, sending chills up my spine. The room erupted, then laughter from some shouts from others. "Who does she think she is?" someone yelled. Another slapped the table. "Get her out!" They forced me to my knees right in the center of the hall, the cold stone biting through my stockings. My heart pounded, but I kept my gaze down, fingers digging into my palms. A hand cracked across my cheek, sharp sting head snapping to the side. I tasted blood, but I didn't cry out, didn't beg. Just knelt there as they dragged me toward the back door like I was trash. The boss's world didn't tolerate defiance, especially not from a nobody waitress like me. I could feel every eye on me judging, mocking. My modest black dress, the one I'd ironed that morning in my tiny apartment, felt like rags now. Who was I to touch his wine? In their eyes, I was nothing. The dragging stopped abruptly when a low groan echoed from the servant's direction, his body convulsing one last time before going still. One of Dante's lieutenants, a burly man with a scarred neck tattoo, dipped his own pinky into the puddle and licked it hesitantly, his face draining of color instantly. He staggered back, vomiting onto a guest's lapel, the expensive fabric ruined as the man shoved him away in disgust. Whispers turned to horrified shouts, chairs scraping as people recoiled from the table. Dante's fist clenched around his napkin, knuckles white, while I felt the guard's grips loosen just a fraction in confusion. Alicia, perched at his side with her manicured nails tapping nervously, shot me a venomous glare, her lips curling as if I'd orchestrated the whole scene for attention. The air thickened with panic, every breath heavy with the realization that death had brushed their fingertips. But as they hauled me away, twisting my arm behind my back, I caught a glimpse of the servant they'd called over. He was one of the newer guys, nervous type, dipping a finger into the spilled wine and tasting it like he'd been ordered. His face went pale first, then twisted in agony. He clutched his throat, eyes bulging, and dropped like a stone dead before he hit the floor. Gasps rippled through the hall. I twisted my head just enough to see Dante staring, stunned, silent, his glass still half raised in his other hand. Our eyes locked again as they pulled me through the doors. Mine weren't wide with terror. They held something else, knowing he'd seen it. And in that split second, everything shifted. "Bring her to me." Dante's voice cut through the chaos, calm but commanding. His men hesitated, exchanging looks, but they obeyed, They shoved me into a small side room off the kitchen, the air thick with smells of garlic and simmering sauce. I straightened my dress, wiped the blood from my lip with the back of my hand, and waited. Minutes later, the door swung open, and there he was, Dante Romano, flanked by 2 guards. Up close, he was even more intimidating, that cologne of his sharp and expensive mixing with the faint metallic tang of fear in the air. "How did you know?" he demanded, stepping closer, towering over me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know who poisoned it, but I recognized its smell." The words hung there simple and quiet. His eyes searched mine, probing for lies. I didn't flinch, just held his gaze steady, my hands clasped in front of me to hide the tremble. He circled me slowly like a predator sizing up prey. "A waitress who knows poison scents, that's no coincidence." I said nothing more, letting the silence speak. Outside, I heard the panic sirens in the distance, people scrambling. But in here, it was just us. The air thick with unspoken questions. Why me? How he didn't know yet, but that moment planted the first seed of doubt in his mind about who I really was. In the dim light of that side room, Dante snapped his fingers and a guard thrust a vial under my nose, the remnants of the wine scraped from the floor. I inhaled sharply, my nostrils flaring as the acrid tang hit me, body recoiling instinctively like touching a hot stove. My knees buckled slightly and I gripped the edge of a counter to steady myself, nails scraping wood. Dante's brow furrowed, watching every twitch, every shallow breath I took. "That reaction, it's personal," he muttered more to himself. I nodded once, jaw set, refusing to elaborate as sweat beaded on my forehead. The guard yanked the vial away, but the scent lingered, clinging to my clothes like a ghost. Dante's hand hovered near my shoulder, almost offering support, then dropped, his first crack of uncertainty showing in the tightening of his jaw. Word spread fast after that night. The next day, headlines screamed about the assassination attempt on Dante Romano, the untouchable mafia boss who ruled the city from the shadows. But they twisted it, painting me as the villain. Ezra Romano, Dante's younger brother, took charge of the investigation. He had that angelic face, all soft features and charming smiles, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He showed up at the restaurant with his entourage, demanding records, questioning staff. When they pulled my file, that's when it unraveled. "Lila Moretti," he read aloud in the back office, smirking. "Worked 2 years ago in a rival family's chemical lab. Specialized in toxic substances." The media ate it up. "Waitress tried to poison mafia boss but failed." My face was everywhere, that timid photo from my employee badge blown up on every news site. Calls flooded in, threats, hate. I holed up in my cramped apartment, the walls thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing, the fridge humming its lonely tune. But they didn't stop there. That night, Dante's men burst in, guns drawn, zip-tying my hands and dragging me to an abandoned warehouse on the docks. The air reeked of salt and rust. They tied me to a metal chair, the cold biting through my thin sweater. Buckets of icy water came next, splashing over me in waves, soaking my clothes, making me gasp and shiver uncontrollably. As the water dripped from my eyelashes, Ezra sauntered in with a tablet, shoving it under my chin. Grainy footage of me in that lab mixing vials under harsh fluorescent lights. "Look at yourself, poison maker," he sneered, zooming in on my gloved hands. My chest heaved, breaths coming in ragged bursts, but I turned my face away, staring at a rusted pipe dripping steadily. The men around him chuckled, one flicking water from my hair like I was a wet dog. Dante watched from the shadows, arms crossed, his silence louder than their taunts. Ezra leaned in close, breath, sour, whispering, "Confess and maybe we'll make it quick." I spat a mouthful of water at his shoes. The act deliberate, watching it soak his polished leather. His face twisted in rage, fist raised, but Dante's sharp enough stopped him cold. "Were you saving him? Or setting a trap?" One growled, his face inches from mine. I bit my lip hard, tasting blood again, water dripping from my hair into my eyes. Dante entered then, his presence sucking the oxygen from the room. He pulled up a chair opposite me. Legs spread wide, elbows on knees, staring like he could see through my soul. "If you lie to me, you'll beg for death," he said, voice low and sharp as a blade. I trembled, not just from the cold, but from the memories flooding back, unbidden, the sharp chemical burn on my skin, the screams in that lab. But I said nothing at first. just met his eyes, letting the water pool at my feet. The silence stretched heavy. Finally, I spoke, voice steady despite the chattering teeth. Test me if you want, but I didn't do it. They left me there for hours, dripping and freezing while they debated my fate. I could hear them outside, angry voices, accusations flying. Ezra pushed hardest. She's a plant, from the rivals. Kill her and be done. But Dante's voice cut through. No, she's coming with us. They untied me eventually, wrapping a scratchy blanket around my shoulders, and loaded me into a black SUV. The city lights blurred past as we drove to one of his safe houses, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts. Inside, a maid handed me dry clothes, soft sweater jeans that actually fit. I changed in a bathroom that was bigger than my whole apartment's steam, from the shower fogging the mirror. When I came out, Dante was waiting, a glass of scotch in hand. "Talk," he said simply. I sat on the edge of a leather couch, hands in my lap, and let it out slow. I was forced to test that poison 2 years ago. My fingers moved to the buttons of my blouse, undoing just enough to reveal the scars, jagged, puckered lines across my collarbone and down my side, souvenirs from needles and burns. Chemical burns that still ached in the cold. Escaped the lab, hid ever since. False name, low profile, waitressing paid the bills. His face didn't change much, but his eyes darkened, fear in mine mirroring something in his hatred for what I'd endured and that deep knowledge of death's edge. He leaned forward, tracing a scar lightly with his finger, not touching skin, but close enough to feel the heat. "Who ran that lab?" I shook my head. "Doesn't matter now." But it did to him. Unbeknownst to me then, his own brother had funded it. Later that evening, as I wrapped myself in a robe by the fireplace, flames dancing shadows across the scars, Dante returned with a small locked box. He set it on the coffee table with a thud, key turning slowly. Inside lay a faded photo, me younger, standing beside a man with my same eyes, both in lab coats. "Your father," he said flatly, sliding it toward me. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, tracing his face, the photo crinkling under my grip. A single tear escaped, splashing onto the image, but I wiped it away quickly, setting it down with deliberate care. Dante's gaze softened imperceptibly, his hand covering mine for a beat too long. "He worked for me once. Briefly." The revelation hung, unspoken connections weaving tighter, my shoulders squaring as I pushed the box back. "Then you know what they did to him." Days turned into a fragile truce after that. Dante kept me close, under protection, he called it. The mansion became my world, grand rooms with fireplaces, crackling guards at every door. He'd watch me sometimes from across the dining table during meals, his fork pausing mid-bite as I pushed food around my plate. We'd talk in snippets about the city. The restaurant, nothing deep. But there was a pull unspoken. One night, after a storm rattled the windows, he found me in the library, curled up with an old book on chemistry I'd pulled from the shelves. "You really know your poisons," he said, handing me a mug of tea. I nodded, sipping slow. Had to survive. His hand brushed mine, then lingering. Warmth spread, cutting through the chill. It wasn't fireworks, just quiet, understanding respect, building like a slow burn. During a quiet breakfast, Alicia burst into the dining room unannounced, her heels clicking like gunfire, a stack of glossy magazines under her arm. She flung them across the table, pages splaying open to photos of me serving tables captioned with vicious barbs about the boss's gutter pet. Coffee sloshed from my cup as I steadied it, knuckles paling around the handle. She circled the table, voice dripping sarcasm. "How quaint, playing house with the help." Dante's fork clattered down, but before he could speak, I stood slowly, gathering the magazines into a neat pile, then handed them back with a level stare. "Jealousy doesn't suit you." She snatched them, storming out, but not before hissing, "You'll be back scrubbing floors soon." The door slammed, leaving a charged silence where Dante's approving nod met my unflinching posture. Ezra played his cards next, all smiles and false warmth. He cornered me in the garden one afternoon, the sun filtering through leaves, birds chirping like nothing was wrong. "Lila, you've been through hell. Let me help you redeem yourself." His voice dripped honey. "Prepare the wine for the next party. Show everyone you're on our side." I hesitated, stomach twisting, but nodded. What choice did I have? The party was bigger underworld types. Socialites in glittering gowns, laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings. Guests snickered as I poured. Let's hope she doesn't spill it again. I kept my head down, hands steady, pouring Dante's glass last. He raised it to me, a small nod trust flickering there. As I poured the final drops into Dante's glass, a guest, a slick-haired investor with gold chains, grabbed my wrist mid-motion, twisting it until the decanter tilted dangerously. Careful, darling, wouldn't want another accident. He leered, his grip bruising as laughter erupted around us. Wine splashed onto the white tablecloth, staining like accusations. I yanked free, shaking out my wrist, blood rushing to my fingertips, and continued pouring, without a word, eyes locked on the crystal. Dante's gaze sharpened across the table, his conversation halting mid-sentence. The investor released me with a mocking pat on my back, but the room's energy shifted, my steady hands pouring defiance into every drop. He took a sip, then another. Then his face contorted, glass crashing as he collapsed, clutching his chest. Chaos exploded, screams, tables overturning. She poisoned him again, someone yelled, pointing at me. Guards tackled me to the ground, knees in my back. It wasn't me, I screamed, struggling, tasting dirt from the rug. Ezra knelt beside Dante, feigning shock, while Alicia, his sleek ex-lover with sharp red lips and sharper eyes, hovered nearby, whispering. Evidence piled up, my fingerprints on the bottle, the same poison scent. They dragged me to a cell in the basement, iron bars clanging shut. I sank against the wall, head in hands, the weight of betrayal crushing. How I'd checked it myself. In the dim basement, cell hours blurred into a haze of flickering fluorescent buzz until Ezra descended the stairs, a syringe glinting in his palm. He crouched at the bars, injecting it into a rat scurrying nearby, the creature seized, foaming at the mouth before stiffening. Same stuff you used upstairs, he taunted, tossing the empty vial through the bars. It shattered at my feet, shards slicing my bare ankle. Blood trickled warm, mixing with cell grime as I pressed my back harder against the damp wall, breaths shallow. His laughter echoed up the stairs, but then Dr. Hale appeared behind him, pulling him aside with urgent whispers. I watched them argue, Hale's face urgent, Ezra's dismissive wave cutting him off. The doctor's eyes flicked to me, one sympathy warning before they vanished, leaving me with the dying rat's twitches mirroring my pounding pulse. Dante survived thanks to Dr. Hale rushing in with his kit. The family doctor, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, always calm under pressure, specialized in covering up these messes. He pumped Dante's stomach right there on the floor amid the spilled caviar and broken heels. Analysis came back quick. The wine had been switched. Security footage showed a 10-second gap, expertly cut. Only one person had access to override the system. Ezra. Dante, pale but furious, launched a secret probe from his bed. I stayed locked up, meals slid through a slot, the damp air seeping into my bones. But one night, the door creaked open. Dante stood there, leaning on the frame, eyes burning. "You're the only witness I trust," he said quietly. "No one touches her." He moved me to a secure wing, guards doubled. Our talks deepened, then nights by the fire, him in a robe, me wrapped in a blanket. He'd share bits of his world, the empire built on blood and loyalty, the constant knives at his back. I'd listen, tracing my scars absent-mindedly, and he'd reach over, stilling my hand. "You're stronger than they know," he'd murmur. Tension built electric, his thumb brushing my wrist, my breath catching. One evening, after a close call with a sniper, he pulled me close, lips crashing into mine. Rough, desperate tasting of whiskey and relief. It wasn't gentle romance. It was survival, two broken souls recognizing each other in the dark. One stormy night in the secure wing, Dante spread maps across a massive oak desk, red pins marking Ezra's suspected hideouts. I leaned over, pointing to a forgotten dockside warehouse circled in faded ink. "They're hidden shipments," I said, voice firm, recalling lab deliveries from years back. His eyes lit with surprise, then respect, as he radioed orders immediately. Hours later, a guard burst in, breathless. "We hid it, crates of the same poison manifest signed by ER." Dante's fist slammed the desk's splintering wood while I stepped back, arms crossed, watching the fury build in his veins. He turned to me, voice gravel. "You just saved my operation." The maps crumpled in his grip, victory tasting bittersweet amid the thunder outside. But the underworld whispered. The boss is being controlled by a mere waitress. Socialites at the next gathering, elegant women with diamonds dripping from necks, cornered me in the powder room. Did you think he'd marry someone who used to wash glasses? One sneered, her perfume cloying. You're just a toy until he tires. Laughter echoed off marble sinks. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, met her eyes calm. Keep talking, see where it gets you. Walked out head high, but inside it stung. Dante stayed silent, publicly protecting me from more exposure, but I mistook it for indifference. Am I just a pawn in your revenge? I asked him one night, voice cracking. He cupped my face. No, but I can't risk you. Heartbroken, feeling like his weakness, I slipped away at dawn, packed. A small bag climbed the back wall, vanished into the city mist. Freedom, or so I thought. While hiding in a dingy motel on the city's edge, rain lashing the window, a knock rattled the thin door. I froze, hand on the knife under my pillow, peering through the peephole. Dr. Hale soaked, clutching a soaked envelope. He slid it under. Run, they're coming. Your blood work from the lab, it matches antidote traces only you could produce. Inside, lab reports detailing my unique immunity stamped with Ezra's initials. I burned them in the sink flames, reflecting in my determined eyes, then slipped out the fire escape as tires screeched below. Hale's car idled at the alley's end. I slid in silently, his nod confirming the alliance I'd never asked for, but desperately needed. Dante tore the city apart, searching. Old records surfaced in his frenzied, dusty files from 15 years back. My father, Antonio Moretti, a low-level enforcer, had taken a bullet for a young Dante during an assassination hit. Saved his life. Later, Antonio vanished, ending up as a test subject in those poison labs funded secretly by Ezra to build weapons against rivals. Dante pieced it. I'd saved him twice, blood debt repaid in full. At the next Mafia summit, power brokers crammed into a smoky back room. He stood tall. From this day on, she's not a servant. She's the one I owe and the one I choose. Silence fell like a guillotine. Ezra's face paled, but he played cool. The final blow came swift. Ezra's men snatched me off the street, blindfolded, thrown into a van reeking of gasoline. Tied to a chair in an empty factory, he loomed over me, that angelic mask cracking. Give me your empire, brother, or she dies. Dante arrived alone, hands up, signing over papers on a rickety table. But as Ezra gloated, he nodded to his hidden sniper. A shot rang out, me crumpling, blood blooming on my chest. Ezra laughed maniacally. You lost everything for a servant. Dante's gun flashed bullets, ripping into his brother's body, slumping. He rushed to me, cradling my head, tears streaking his face for the first time. Lila. No. The world collapsed for him, funeral, somber black suits, rain pattering on the casket. He broke a titan, humbled. In the factory's aftermath, as Dante knelt over my body, Ezra's phone buzzed incessantly on the floor. Dante snatched it, scrolling through texts, coordinates to a rival clan's vault, promises of alliance if he fell. His face hardened, pocketing it as backup sirens wailed closer. Dr. Hale knelt beside him, pressing 2 fingers to my neck discreetly. She's gone, boss. We need to move. Dante nodded numbly, lifting me gently, my head lolling against his chest, fake blood smearing his shirt. Ezra's lifeless eyes stared accusingly, but Dante kicked the corpse aside, carrying me into the night, grief fueling his resolve to dismantle every trace of betrayal. But shadows shifted 2 nights later. Dante, hollow-eyed in his study, found Dr. Hale's note tucked in a file. Bullet non-lethal sedative round. Footsteps echoed. I emerged from the darkness. Alive, bandaged, but standing. I had to die. So you could live. I'd cut the deal with Hale weeks ago, planning the fake-out to draw Ezra's hand. The shy waitress had orchestrated it all, playing life and death like a pro. Dante stared speechless, then gripped my hand tight, pulling me close. From now on, you're not my waitress. You're my equal. We stood there, the Empire's ruins around us, but unbreakable. At dawn, as we overlooked the city from the mansion's balcony, wind whipping our hair, Dante handed me a small velvet box inside a ring etched with my father's initials intertwined with his. Not a proposal, a vow, he said, sliding it onto my finger. It fit perfectly, cool metal warming against my skin. I twisted it once, feeling the weight settle, then leaned into his side, watching the sun rise over the skyline we'd both nearly lost. His arm wrapped around me, solid, unyielding. No words needed. The city below bowed to our shared silence, a new era dawning. You've been there, invisible, judged your quiet strength, mistaken for weakness. But it was never small. It carried you through the fire, turned poison into power. You rose not with noise, but with the steady beat of your own heart. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below, and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally, healing.